Well, it's that time of year. Every year around this time, I'm going to be counting down my top 25. But as of now, I haven't been to a lot of parks. So doing a top 25 would be including a lot of roller coasters that I don't actually really like. So instead, I'm going to be doing a top 10. This way, all the coasters on the list are coasters that I actually enjoy. Also, there's one more thing I want to point out. Over New Year's, I'm going to go to Six Flags Magic Mountain and pick up a few new credits like West Coast Racers, Full Throttle, and Wonder Woman, and many more. So this list may quickly become outdated, so I will make an early 2023 top 10. So now let's get straight into the video. Coming in at number 10 and barely making this list is Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Don't get me wrong, I really like this coaster, although it definitely is a bit more family-oriented. I was surprised, though, to find some parts where I did get thrown out of my seat, got some pretty good airtime. I found the launch fun, or the 3 launches fun. This ride has 3 launches, and it's a very long ride. But anyway, this ride has 3 launches, and I found all of them fun. Although my standards for launches are set very low because the most powerful launch I've been on is Rock and Roller Coaster. So, a Disney coaster. But then still, out of the 3 Intamins I've ridden, this is probably still the most intense one. I've ridden Superman Escape from Krypton at Six Flags Magic Mountain, this, and Incredicoaster, well, I rode it when it was California Screamin' at California Adventure. This ride just has one inversion, having a heartline roll, or maybe it's a corkscrew, I really don't know at this point. But it's some sort of inversion. It would be a good first inversion for kids who might be scared of going upside down on roller coasters, and although it's not a lot, I found it pretty fun. Staying in the same park for number 9, we are going to Kumba. This is an old school B&M, so unlike their newer modern coasters, which are smooth, graceful, and have big, huge, drawn-out elements, this is a tight, compact mess of track, and it's very intense. There unfortunately have been rumors about this coaster's future in the park, and I really hope this doesn't get removed. One of the main reasons, just listen to the B&M roar. Beautiful, isn't it? This coaster is definitely intensity, like positive G's, and inversion based. It has 7 inversions, and boy is it intense. Anyway, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about Kumba, so we will move on to number 8, which is Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom. This isn't too thrilling of a ride, but I always come off it thinking, I want to go on that again. It's just so fun and entertaining, and it tells its story so well throughout the ride. This ride only has a top speed of 50 miles an hour, and the actual mountain itself is 199 feet 11 inches tall. I think this is pretty freaking hilarious, because they did that so they wouldn't have to put one of those blinking lights you see on top of buildings, because that's for structures taller, or 200 feet and taller. And so that's actually how tall Tower of Terror is too. But the way that they sculpt the mountain, or it's something with the way they paint shadows or something, that it makes the mountain look so much taller from further away, and it's just amazing. I have no idea how they did it, but it's just so freaking cool. So this is a nice long ride, and some of it is taken up by this pre-lift. Well, actually there's a pre-lift, and then a small lift hill, and then kind of meandering turns. And if you've never watched a POV or never ridden it before, you might think, oh, just a nice little innocent mine train coaster. And then you go up this big lift hill, and then it gets going. And even though this coaster is a little bit more than 150 feet tall, the view from the lift hill is absolutely amazing. Probably hard to beat, although I've heard Millennium Force's lift hill is pretty good, but I haven't ridden that. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. So, spoiler alert if you haven't ridden the ride, but you turn through this small ice cave, and then, oh no, the track's broken. So there's a switch track, so when you fall backwards, you actually go through a different path through this helix, and then you see this little show where the Yeti destroys the track, and then you fall forward. Then from then on, it's weaving in and out of the mountain, and it's just a really nice, long, fun ride. But this isn't a ride review, so I'm not going to go too in-depth. So let's move on to number 7, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. This is a Vekoma spinner, and it's the first of its kind. And of course, since this is a Disney coaster, it's very well themed, and just like Everest, tells its story very well throughout the queue and the ride. Speaking of the ride, let's get into that. So something that I found pretty cool was actually the onboard audio. There's 6 songs you can get. There's One Way or Another, September, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Conga, Disco Inferno, and I Ran So Far Away. So far I've ridden it 4 times, and the songs that I've gotten are September, One Way or Another, Disco Inferno, and Everybody Wants to Rule the World. So I think I've gotten a pretty good feel for the ride. Something you should know, though, is it's not free spinning, it's controlled spinning, and it points you towards the action because the story is being told throughout the ride. And the spinning motion, like the way that it spins you, changes depending on the song that you get. So Disney advertises this as their first backwards launching coaster. And while you could say that it is because the cars turn around during the launch, or not during the launch, before they launch, they turn around so you're facing backwards, but there are no switch tracks or drop tracks or anything involved. So I consider it a forwards launch, and the launch itself, it isn't that powerful, even for my low standards that I mentioned earlier in the video. One thing I really do love about this, though, is the restraints. I love these restraints. They're hydraulic restraints, but you don't get stapled, and they don't come down any further during the ride, and you feel very free, and they're just really nice, comfortable restraints. They feel kind of like RMC restraints, but a little less bulky. But for the actual ride, again, just like any Disney coaster, it isn't that thrilling, but boy is it fun. I don't actually know what the top speed is, I'll have to look that up, but you just can't stop smiling the whole time. It doesn't have too much airtime, although there are a few small moments where you get thrown up a little bit. It's not any intense ejector like RMC's, it's just like mild floater, but I still just really like this coaster, and the fact that it's in the dark makes it feel a lot more thrilling than it probably would if it was an outdoor coaster. My 6th favorite coaster is SheiKra at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This is a B&M dive, and unlike Kumba, where it's really tight, compact, and it's like just super intense, this has big, drawn-out elements and is kind of mild, but kind of not in a way. Here, I'll explain. So, it has these big, drawn-out elements, and it doesn't pull way intense forces like Kumba, but it definitely is not like a family coaster by any means. It's, I think, 205 feet tall. So, after the lift hill, you got this nice scenic turnaround, and then my favorite part, not the drop, the hold brakes before the drop. So you are being held 200 feet in the air over a 90-degree drop with your feet dangling. So it holds you there for a few seconds, and then you drop. This is a phenomenal drop. So you're going down, it's a 90-degree angle, and it's just very big and floaty, and it's not too intense, but just like the whole ride, it's not that mild either. And this coaster, unlike some other B&M dives, only has one inversion, and that's the Big Immelman. Another really good part of the ride is the second drop off the mid-course. You dive into a tunnel, but in the POV, it's blocked by my hat, because I attached my hat to the restraint, and that didn't go well. It kept on blocking the camera. But anyway, this coaster, it's a pretty short ride, but it's a worthwhile one, and definitely ride it if you're going to Busch Gardens. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. So now we are in my top 5, kicking things off with Montu. This is considered by many to be the best B&M invert in North America, although I have heard that Nemesis is better. And just like Kumba, this is a very positive G and inversion-based ride, and again, like Kumba, 7 inversions. Since the track is above you and not below you, some of the inversions actually surprised me. Like, there was a part near the end that I thought was just a normal turn, but instead it turned out to be a 0G roll, or maybe a corkscrew. The highlight of the ride for me was probably the Batwing. This is a very intense double inversion. Well, it's like 2 inversions into one element, and it resembles an inverted Cobra roll. And just like Kumba, this is an old school B&M, which is inversion based. And what I really like is all the inversions are very quick and snappy. Like, look at this 0G roll. Wait a minute, rewind a little bit. Well, that about sums up this whole ride. Cannibal takes the number 4 spot. This ride is absolutely insane. The fact that it has a very steep beyond vertical drop of 116 degrees, and, beyond vertical is in my channel's name, and that beyond vertical drop is at 200 feet in the air. Was this manufactured by Gerstlaughter? Was it manufactured by Intamin? No, it was manufactured by Lagoon themselves with little help from art engineering. But still, that is crazy. And, how intimidating this ride looks from off of the ride is pretty hard to beat. And the mountain backdrop is beautiful as well. It's also hard to beat on this ride? A night ride. Night rides on this thing are unbelievable. So if you're ever going to Lagoon, do not skip a Cannibal night ride. This ride has a unique way of carrying its cars to the top of the tower. Instead of having a vertical chain lift, it has an elevator that brings cars to the top. For me, the highlight of the ride is the Lagoon roll. 2 back-to-back barrel rolls going opposite directions. Normally, you wouldn't like a mid-course to, kill all the speed on the ride, but in this case, you want it because it slows you down so you can get all that amazing hang time. I haven't ridden a lot of coasters that have a lot of elements with hang time in them, but this is probably the most hang time I've ever experienced on a single element, or I guess you could consider it too. But anyway, let's move on to the next one, number 3. X2 is my third favorite coaster for a reason. Standing at over 200 feet tall, this is one of the largest 4D coasters in the world. Way bigger than those S&S 40 free spin things. And I should also point out that X2 actually doesn't free spin. It is a controlled spin, which actually uses a very clever ride mechanism to accomplish this. And although X2 is amazing and it's just absolute disorienting chaos, there are 2 major downsides. The first is that it's very rough, and the second is that there are a few dead spots. So when I was at Magic Mountain, I rode X2 twice. Once during the day, which wasn't so bad, and then once during the night. It was a little bit of a cooler night because it was during the winter, and boy was that rough. I don't remember too much of it, but one of my friends who has been to Six Flags a lot, he says every time he gets off it with a pounding headache. And for the dead spots, this is a short ride, so it can't afford to have dead spots, but unfortunately it does. After the first drop in the Raven turn, you're like, wow, this is the best ride ever. And then the boring turn comes. Edgenica kind of fixed that by making it a sort of overbank that isn't really overbanked. It just goes up and down. But the turn, it does give you time to kind of get a break and contemplate what just happened, but it still is a dead spot. But nevertheless, X2 is an amazing ride, and it is only beaten out by 2 other coasters on my list. So let's get into the first of those 2. So I already have a video explaining why Twisted Colossus used to be my number 1. So if you want a full explanation, you can go over and watch that. But I'm just going to quickly explain it right here. Twisted Colossus would be an average RMC, but the fact that it's dueling just makes it so much more fun. Like, for example, if you're in the Top Gun stall, where one train is going over an airtime hill and the other is in a 0G stall, if you're in the 0G stall, you can look down and see the other train, and if you have friends on the other train, you can wave to them, and it's really fun, and it's just such a really fun and unique experience that you don't get on a ton of coasters. Before we move on to my number 1, there is one honorable mention, and that is Roller Coaster at Lagoon. This takes my number 11 spot on my list and just falls outside of the list, so I did want to mention it. This ride, after 100 years, is still holding up great. For being 100 years old, you'd expect it to be very rough, but it's actually decently smooth for a wooden coaster. But you do get some great airtime, especially in the back row, and this is just all around a great old fun ride that is still holding up great by today's standards. I don't think I could ever see this getting RMC'd unless something catastrophic happened. The reason this fell just outside of my list is because the layout is just a double out and back layout. It's not too much, and it's not creative. It feels almost uninspired, but you do have to kind of give it a break because it was 100 years ago and we didn't have all the crazy elements and insane designers that we have today. Iron Gwazi is my number one, and by a long shot. When I went to Busch Gardens Tampa, I had high expectations for this ride, and it by far exceeded them. I actually, just like Twisted Colossus, I have a video explaining why this is my number one, so you can go and watch that if you want a full explanation, but I'm just going to quickly explain it here. This ride is jam-packed with great elements and amazing airtime. There's actually this pre-lift, and if you're sitting in the back row, that little dip feels wrong. It feels like you're going way too fast over that. But anyway, the highlight of the ride for me is the wave turn. This may not look like it on the POV, but it absolutely sends you out of your seat. It is crazy. I'm sure if you marathoned this ride, you would have bruised thighs just because of the aggressive airtime. It's just such a great, intense, aggressive ride, but not intense in the way Kumba is, like positive G's. Intense in many different forces. There's whippy inversions, there's some laterals, there's of course airtime because it's an RMC, and some floatiness, not floater airtime, but floatiness in the 0G stall. It's just all around a really great, fun, well-rounded ride. It may not be the longest RMC, but it's sure a good one. So that is it for my top 10 coasters. I really hope you enjoyed. I put a lot of effort into this video, so please like and subscribe. And I'm thinking of making some merchandise, so here's a little sneak peek. It's going to be this t-shirt that says I'm a coaster enthusiast on it. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.